Disclaimer: it's an audio description of the movie. The events and characters appearing in this movie are fictitious. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. To have a twist and make it more interesting, the movie is divided into several parts. It Happened One Night. Written by Robert Riskin, based on a story by Samuel Hopkins Adams. Chapter 1. The harbor at Miami Beach fades in, providing quick views of yachts, aquaplanes, and luxurious ship craft lying at anchor in the calm. This dissolves to the nameplate on the side of a yacht, reading Elspeth 2. This in turn to a yacht corridor, where a steward is standing in front of a cabin door, near which lies a small collapsible table, upon which there is a tray of steaming food. He lifts the lid, and examines the contents. A heavy-set sailor stands guard near the cabin door. Steward: fine. She ought to like this. Open the door. Guard: without moving, who's gonna take it into her? You? Steward: oh no. Turning to Mullison. Come on. The view widens to include Mullison, a waiter. His eye is decorated with a shiner. Mullison: not me, sir. She threw a ketchup bottle at me this morning. Steward: well, orders are orders. Somebody's gotta take it in. He turns to Fredericks. The view moves to another waiter, who has a patch of bandage on his face. Fredericks: before I bring her another meal, I'll be put off the ship first. Steward interrupts: Henri. The view moves over to a Frenchman. Henri, vehemently: no, monsieur. When I leave the Ritz, you do not say I have to wait on crazy womans. The view moves back to include Steward and the others grouped around him. Another waiter: my wife was an angel compared to this one, sir. And I walked out on her. Guard, impatiently: come on. Make up your mind. A petty officer approaches. He is blustering and officious, but the type that is feeble and ineffective. His name is Lacey. Lacey, what's up? There is a fairly close picture of the group featuring Lacey and the steward. Steward: these pigs. They're afraid to take her food in. Lacey: that's ridiculous. Afraid of a mere girl. Why didn't you do it yourself? He wheels on the steward, him being more afraid than the others, stammering: why, well, I never thought about. Lacey shoving him aside: I never heard of such a thing. Afraid of a mere girl. I'll take it in myself. Lacey moves towards the tray. They all stand around and watch Lacey, much relieved. He picks up the tray and starts toward the door of the cabin. Lacey as he walks muttering: can't get a thing done unless you do it yourself. As he approaches the door: Lacey, open the door. We see him at the cabin door as the guard quickly and gingerly unlocks it. Lacey: afraid of a mere girl. Ridiculous. He stalks in bravely, the tray held majestically in front of him, while the steward and waiters form a circle around the door, waiting expectantly. There is a short pause, following which Lacey comes hurling out backwards and lands on his back, the tray of food scattering all over him. The steward quickly bangs the door shut and turns the key as the waiters stare silently. The scene dissolves to the main deck of the yacht, first affording a close view of a pair of well-shod masculine feet, as they pace agitatedly back and forth. Then as the scene draws back, the possessor of the pacing feet is discovered to be Alexander Andrews, immaculately groomed in yachting clothes. In front of him stands a uniformed captain, but Andrews, brows wrinkled, deep in thought, continues his pacing. Andrews murmuring to himself: on a hunger strike, huh? With a grunt: when's she eaten last? Captain: she hasn't had a thing yesterday or today. Andrews: been sending her meals in regularly? Captain: yes, sir. She refuses them all. Andrews snappily: why didn't you jam it down her throat? Captain: it's not quite that simple. I've dealt with prisoners in my time, but this one. Andrews: absurd. All this fuss over a snip of a girl. I'm going down to see her myself. He leaves with determination, followed by the captain, and both are then seen walking in the direction of the cabin, Andrews grim. Captain: this is dangerous business, Mr. Andrews. After all, Kidnapping is no child's play. But Andrews ignores him and merely stares grimly forward. They arrive in front of the cabin door, where Lacey is brushing himself off, and where a couple of waiters are picking up the last pieces of the broken dishes. Andrews, what's this? What's happened here? Lacey pathetically, she refused another meal, sir. Andrews, get another tray ready. Bring it here at once. Open the door. The guard unlocks the door and Andrews enters. Then we get a view of the cabin at the door, as Andrews enters and closes the door behind him. He looks around and his eyes light on his prisoner, following which the view swings over to Ellie, a beautiful girl in her early 20s. At the moment, she holds a small vase over her head ready to heave it, and her eyes flash angrily. At the sight of her new visitor, however, she lowers the vase and sets it on a small table. Ellie, what do you want? Andrews doesn't stir from the door. Andrews, what's this about not eating? Ellie, I don't want to eat. Raising her voice, and there's one more thing I don't want. Definitely. That's to see you. She lights a cigarette. Andrews watches her a moment. Andrews, know what my next move is? No more cigarettes. Ellie, why don't you put me in chains? Andrews, I might. Ellie, all right. Put me in chains. Do anything you want. But I'm not going to eat a thing until you let me off this boat. She stares petulantly out at the blue sky, but Andrews comes over and sits beside her. Andrews, tenderly, come on Ellie. Stop being silly. You know I'm going to have my way. Ellie, moving away, I won't stand for it. I won't stand for your running my life. Why do you insist on it? Andrews, still tender, you ought to know why. Because. If you are enjoying this video then, sub to the channel will be more entertaining. Also, don't forget to like and share this video. Ellie, interrupting, yes. I know. Heard it a million times. Because I'm your daughter and you love me. Because you don't want me to make any mistakes. Because. Andrews, joining in, because marrying that fool King Westley is. Ellie, you're wasting your time. I'm already married to him. Andrews, not so far as I'm concerned, you're not. They are interrupted by a knock at the door. Andrews, yes? The door opens and several waiters parade in with trays of steaming food. Ellie, threateningly, how many times have I told you not to bring any food in here? The waiters back up, frightened, but Andrews saves them. Andrews, wait a minute. Don't get excited. This isn't for you. To the waiters, put it right here. Ellie glares at her father, and wanders over to the window seat, while the waiters occupy themselves setting the table. Andrews putters around the food, lifting the lids from which tempting aromas emanate. He shuts his eyes, murmuring oohs and ahs. A close-up of Ellie shows her, too, drinking in the inviting aromas, and for a moment she weakens. A close view of Andrews shows him glancing toward Ellie to see her reaction, whereupon Ellie's face freezes. Then Andrews and the waiters come into view. First waiter, anything else, monsieur? Andrews, no. Everything seems quite satisfactory. I may want some more of that delicious gravy. I'll ring. Waiter, very good, monsieur. The waiters bow their way out as Andrews pecks at the food. Andrews, making clucking noise, heavenly. Now Ellie appears in the foreground, with Andrews at the table in the background. Ellie, disdainfully, smart, aren't you? So subtle. Andrews, chewing on a mouthful of food, if Gandhi had a chef like Paul, it would change the whole political situation in India. Ellie, you can't tempt me. Shouting unnecessarily, do you hear? I won't eat. Andrews, quietly, please. I can't fight on an empty stomach. Remember what Napoleon said. Ellie, I hope you're not comparing yourself to Napoleon. He was a strategist. Your idea of strategy is to use a lead pipe. Andrews eats silently while Ellie rants at him, walking around and puffing vigorously on her cigarette. Ellie, muttering, most humiliating thing ever happened to me. A bunch of gorillas shoving me in a car. That crowd outside the justice of the peace must have thought I was a criminal or something. A close view of Andrews intercuts with part of Ellie's speech. At the end of her speech he smacks his lips, enjoying the food with too great a relish. Then the two are seen together. Ellie, after a pause, strongly, where are you taking me? Andrews, South America. Ellie, South America. Andrews, we leave Miami in an hour. Soon we get some supplies aboard. Ellie, threateningly, you'll have a corpse on your hands. That what you'll have. I won't eat a thing while I'm on this boat. Andrews, buttering bread, in that event, we won't need so many supplies. Ellie, what do you expect to accomplish by all this? I'm already married. Andrews, I'll get it annulled. Ellie, you'll never do it. You can't do it. Andrews, I'll do it if it takes every penny I've got. I'll do it if I have to bribe that musical comedy justice of the peace. I'll do it if I have to prove that you were dragged in, staggering drunk. You probably were. This filet mignon is divine. He smacks his lips. Ellie, seen with her father, what have you got against King Westley? Andrews, nothing much. I just think he's a fake, that's all. Ellie, you only met him once. Andrews, that was enough. Do you mind handing me the ketchup? Ellie, you talk as if he were a gigolo or something. Andrews, rising reaching for ketchup, never mind I'll get it myself. He falls back in his chair, gigolo? Why, you took the word right out of my mouth. Thanks. Ellie, he's one of the best flyers in the country. Right now he's planning a trip to Japan. Andrews, you're going to finance him, I suppose. Ellie, why not? Look what he's doing for aviation. It takes courage to do what he does. At least he's accomplished something worthwhile. I suppose you'd like to have me marry a businessman. Well, I hate businessmen particularly if you're a shining example. He grins, not at all offended, knowing she doesn't mean it. Ellie, your whole life is devoted to just one thing. To accumulate more money. At least there's romance in what he's doing. Andrews, unequivocally, he's no good Ellie, and you know it. You married him only because I told you not to. Ellie, you've been telling me what not to do since I was old enough to remember. Screaming, I'm sick of it. And as Andrews ignores her, she starts moving around the table toward him. Next, she appears sitting on the edge of Andrews' chair, and she throws her arm around his shoulder. Ellie, pleading sweetly, listen Dad. Let's not fight like this anymore. I know you're worried about me and want me to be happy. And I love you for it. But please try to understand. You're not being fair. This isn't just a crazy impulse of mine. King and I talked about it a lot before we decided to get married. Look, why can't we give it a trial, let's say for a year or so? If it's wrong, King and I will be the first to know it. We can get a divorce, can't we? Now, be a dear, and let me off the boat. Keeping me prisoner like this is so silly. Andrews has been listening silently throughout the speech, giving no indication of his feelings in the matter. Andrews, unimpressed, you'll be set free when the marriage is annulled. A close-up of Ellie, her eyes blazing angrily, shows her slowly edging away from her father, while he continues. Andrews, so there's no use being a stubborn idiot. Ellie, I come from a long line of stubborn idiots. Andrews, a time will come when you'll thank me for this. Ellie, I won't thank you. I'll never thank you. Andrews, please don't shout. Ellie, I'll shout to my heart's content. I'll scream if I want to. Andrews, reaching for cake, coconut layer cake. Nice and gooey too. Just the way I like it. He is about to insert the first bite in his mouth, when Ellie overturns the small serving table, dumping its contents into her father's lap. The movement is so unexpected that, the fork still suspended near Andrew's mouth, stares at her stupefied. Then realizing what she has done, his eyes flash in anger. Dropping his fork, he rises and goes over to her, while she stands facing him defiantly. Without a word or warning, he slaps her a stinging blow across the cheek. For a moment she doesn't stir, her eyes widening in surprise, and staring at him unbelievingly. Then turning abruptly she bolts out of the door. Andrews remains motionless, his eyes shutting painfully. It is the first time he has struck her, and it hurts. Andrews. Ellie. And he starts for the door. Next on the deck, at the open cabin door, Andrews is seen, staring off at something, and an amazed, frightened look comes into his eyes. Then, as viewed from his position at the cabin door, Ellie appears standing on the rail, and with a professional dive, she leaps into the water. A full view of the deck reveals the crew and the officers scurrying around, several of them shouting, "Somebody overboard!" Andrews, "It's my daughter, go after her!" Captain, shouting, "Lower the boats!" General excitement reigns, several of the crew dive into the water, others release the boat lines. Following this, Ellie is seen swimming furiously against the giant waves. Next, she appears as a small speck in the distance, while half a dozen of the crew are swimming in pursuit. At the side of the yacht, one of the boats has already been lowered, and two men jump in and grab the oars. The men seem to be gaining on Ellie. In the distance, several small motorboats are anchored, and over the sides of the boats, their owners are fishing. Ellie seems to be headed in their direction. Will Ellie be able to escape from her father and reunite with King? If at all she escapes, how her journey in reuniting with the King will be? To know what happens with Ellie, stay tuned for Chapter 2.